Lyndon here, and welcome to Lead Management for Higher Education HUG. This is a HUG that we're doing specifically for the folks in higher education. But because lead management is such a dynamic topic, it really doesn't matter the industry that you're in, even though we will be speaking about higher education, but because it will be focusing on particular strategies that we have seen customers not always taking advantage of, and by extension, it's costing them revenue. So my name is Lyndon Brathwaite. I am the lead consultant and a platinum partner for HubSpot within the English-speaking Caribbean. So I'm all the way out here in the tropics. It's not as sunny as it normally is, but today is one of those nice cool days as well. And we want to be focusing on the importance of managing leads. So I have as a little bit of a structure for us. So instead of me trying to be all over the place, so I've put it together as a presentation, which will be available later. And also there will be some instances where I'll be referring to a HubSpot portal within itself. So we'll actually see where certain things are. All right. So why lead management? Why did we actually choose this particular topic? Well, the reason that we chose the topic was mainly because based upon the organizations that we have been working with in the higher education space, apart from just the usual banter between marketing and sales in terms of leads, we have realized that while the relationship between the two is still broken, the way that they actually manage leads, whether you call your people course advisors, sales reps, whatever it is the name that you use for the folks who are interacting with those respective leads, when they are actually coming into your system, however it is that you're actually using it. And this is actually for folks who are also not even using a CRM or not using HubSpot. All right. And when we have the conversations, we've recognized that there's a bit of a trend, right? So while customers may call us to talk about sales and sales strategies, get to realize that sometimes the problem isn't the sales strategy per se, but it's in how the organization has or does not have an approach towards managing leads. And in the higher education space, as we know, it is highly competitive, all right? And apart from just being highly competitive, you also have this high demand. Now, I'm not sure exactly as to where you may be, which part of the world you are actually in, but as it relates to your demand, you tend to find that you can get a little bit complacent as it relates to your lead flow, because I'll use two examples of what I've heard in recent conversations, and I'll actually take it outside of I'm going to take it actually outside of the higher education space. So someone in insurance is saying to me, Lyndon, people have to come to us for insurance, for automotive insurance. But for some reason, if 50 leads come in during the course of the week, if my team follows up with at least 5% of those leads, then I'll be happy. So I'm asking him, well, what's the reason for that? And again, it comes back to there's no structure, there's no strategy as it relates to the proper management of said leads. So you do tend to find that even in instances where you have industries where it is a demand, you have to do this particular thing, you have to get insurance. We have organizations that still take that in a very complacent way, and they lose opportunities. I've seen it in automotive as well. There's a lot of demand in those particular spaces, but because you don't have a proper lead management flow or structure or approach, then you tend to find that you're losing. So what happens there? Well, you have lead quality issues in terms of specific reasons as to why. So you tend to find you have other instances where folks are bringing leads in, but the quality of the lead. So I would have people say to me, oh, Lyndon, sometimes these leads are trash. Facebook doesn't generate enough good leads, etc., etc. Okay, we'll have a discussion on that, right? And then you also have instances where the lead comes in and there's this long period of time as to where the lead isn't followed up on time. I actually remember seeing an email from someone who just discovered HubSpot sequences, and he sent a sequence out to a customer, and the person responded to him saying, excuse me, you're now sending me this after a month after I filled out your form and he did not respond? I bought from someone else. So the way that a sales rep or an organization, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, the way that you manage your leads is extremely important. And the things that we've been able to identify, apart from just process, technology, also comes down to skills. So that's what that last point is. There's a skills gap as it relates to sometimes people not having the right understanding, or maybe the organization themselves not properly structuring or mapping out, these are the things that we need to do when a lead comes in, this happens next. All right. So these are some of the problems as it relates to that. Now, when it comes to the overall impact of that, it's pretty straightforward, right? Missed opportunities and lost revenue. We wouldn't make that too much of a science, because at the end of the day, it is what it is. You're going to lose out on opportunities, and it's going to affect you as it relates to your revenue. I remember having a conversation with someone. This was early 2021, or middle of 2021, and she was interested in doing some work along the lines, not even HubSpot. They were actually interested in doing some work along the lines of sales training, developing a strategy towards helping the school improve on their lead flow, their conversion rates, etc. And one of my qualifying questions, just to really understand as to how important is this for them, I asked, so what happens if this doesn't work out? You've been trying different things and you'll have been sort of making it. Well, I wouldn't say sort of making it, because every year they've been losing money. What happens if this doesn't work? And she said, well, we'll have to possibly close the school. And this is after we went through a series of things. The closing of the school was the end, but she started to speak about, cutting back on staff, cutting back on expenses, cutting back on salaries, etc., etc., etc. So again, a lead is valuable, and the way that we manage leads is extremely valuable, not just in 2024, but overall. Now, moving forward, whether you're doing it the manual way, or you want to now start using technology to help you move forward in the right direction. So this is where the introduction of lead management, but HubSpot. So one of the things that I like to tell people is that I like to focus on people, process, and technology. Lead management is part of that process. When a lead comes in, what happens? We could talk strategy outside of the tech, but when we combine the two as it relates to HubSpot and the lead management strategy, and we also talk about how this can enhance the roles of the people, making them a lot more efficient, maybe even starting to train them to be a little bit more analytical, etc. Because you'll find yourself kind of improving on the skill set of said individual. But again, we have to start thinking about what do we want to do. So the series of things that I'm going to be going into is not going to be rocket science, folks. As a sales consultant, I like to keep things simple. So what I'm going to be showing here, we're just going to be scratching the surface on the things to do, because there are going to be other follow-up sessions or follow-up hugs, but that's going to carry us into more advanced things. Right now, I just want to plant the seed as to how important lead management is. All right. So what is it? Well, it's the flow of leads that's coming into your organization. And those leads could be coming from the attract, the tracking, and the nurturing side. So you really want to be able to now manage those leads throughout the journey. And in this instance, we're talking about the student enrollment journey. All right. And with the student enrollment journey, you have so many different touch points. And I'll maybe talk about this a little bit further down in the conversation, because the student enrollment journey, these are the areas where sometimes when the lead comes in, they're kind of already making up their mind. Or when a lead fills out a form, what stage are they at mentally in terms of making a decision whether your institution is first, second, or third in that decision-making process, right? And the impact of that in terms of when you do have a proper lead management strategy, well, as I was saying before, it takes away the inefficiencies and it makes your team or your organization a lot more efficient and productive. It can increase your conversion ratios, because you're now, instead of sort of waiting for a sales rep to follow up, you're sort of using some automation, or the system is reminding said people to make that call, and they are actually being disciplined enough towards doing it. The customer experience or the student experience, that's very, very important, because as we know, the experience of a said student also helps bring additional revenue. All right. And of course, it reduces revenue leakage. Of course, we all want to make sure that we are maximizing as much, squeezing as much juice out of the orange as we can. And of course, it provides data-driven insights as it relates to what's helping you do other stuff. All right. So I want to give you a little story. All right. I like using stories to help create the relatability of what we're going to be talking about. So there was an executive director having a conversation, and this person, they were pissed because they remembered giving one of their people some leads for a program. I think it was for a master's program. The master's program was, let's say, about $33,000 per program. Right. What happened is that they passed it on, let's say, via paper, and they gave it to the sales rep, and the sales rep may have taken it and put it on the table, never called the people on day. And what happened is that those people went elsewhere. So just by that alone, by not even taking it and putting it inside of HubSpot and then assigning it to someone so that it could automate or even set up a task automatically based upon who it's assigned to, the potential loss of that was $99,000 in terms of revenue, because you didn't have it as simple as that was, you know what, I have a lead, I need to pass it on to someone, let me put it in the system, or make sure that they put it in the system so that I can come back and double check to make sure that they are also reminded, or they know, or they've done, or I can get an update as to what has happened with any one of these three leads. So again, real examples I like to talk about here, right? The other one was 1,600 leads missed with a potential of 23 million plus in lost revenue. Again, real examples, right? This one wasn't a school, but I like to use this example because of the fact that even the top performers of this organization in this example couldn't account for some of the leads as it relates to whether those leads were disqualified, whether they did do the follow-up. So when we looked at one, so we took the top performer, we asked them, okay, so this is what you brought in, this is what you closed, what happened to this difference? And they couldn't account. They said, you know what, I could honestly say there are a couple of those people inside of there, well, I did not speak to. I may have forgotten because, again, this person was extremely busy in turning over a number of units, right? As I say, they are top performer in the organization, so they are busy. But as much as they are attracting so many leads coming to them, they can only manage so much. So what happens to the surplus of leads, and how can those things be managed, right? When we looked at all of that, and we used the example of only four. Actually, let me draw the point here. This was only using 4 examples. So it was a top performer, 2 middle performers, and a low performer. And we're looking at $23 million. And this organization has over 20 sales reps. So again, if we're looking at it in context where demand is high inside of higher education, and we know that sometimes higher education doesn't always have sales reps per se, right? So marketing may have to do certain things to follow up, or the person who's acting as the role of a sales rep, they may not always have the right skill set, or may not be as organized, or they have to be juggling different things. Then what's going to happen is some of those leads are actually going to get lost, right? So this is where the whole conversation of lead management comes in. And as you listen to this, contextualize whether you are experiencing any of that or have experienced any of that, and how do you want to now manage those things? Because what we're going to be going into here is different ways that HubSpot helps you do that. And again, I created the structure for this via presentation first. We'll touch on the actual CRM after, but I want you all to visualize a couple of things, right? So the first thing that I like to encourage people to look at is just understanding what proper lead management should really be, right? So we're looking at how do you capture leads, whether you're bringing it in manually, so you're doing it from off your phone, or you're writing it down on a piece of paper, then to bring it into the CRM. So it starts off with the capture. In this instance, what you're seeing there is a form, all right? And then from that, how do you track? Are you using any task management tools? Again, we keep in the conversation of lead management. Very, very simple in this first instance, and we're going to start expanding in the other hugs, right? So how are you tracking, especially if this person is using online, using the website to visit your website? How are you now using HubSpot to help you track this particular person? So to help you help yourself, right? And then how are you now nurturing based upon a person's activity, and then using that nurturing based upon their activity towards conversion? It's a process. All right. So it's not just to say, well, we want to do one particular area. Management of leads, even if a lead is converted to a deal, so you're talking quote unquote deal management, it's still a lead nonetheless. And at the end of the day, that person is moving from lead all the way to customer. So we're taking everything from the left and moving it straight across to the right. Yeah. So as we're looking at the management, so we want to be able to manage leads directly through the process. And in this instance, we're looking at the HubSpot tools. So we're looking at forms, we're looking at the contact record, we're looking at how we could use a workflow or a sequence. And then from there, when a deal is actually created, how does that deal? How do we now work towards closing that deal? And then we can even go into the service side, but that's not part of it here. So let's talk a little bit about Capture. All right. So inside of HubSpot, you have the ability of using forms. You could also use your phone, and you can use your desktop. If I had to drop a hot tip, my first hot tip will be making sure that your properties, make sure if I have it to, right? Make sure that your properties are set in the right way. So one of the biggest missteps that I see sometimes is that the properties inside of the HubSpot portal, they don't have the right properties, or they didn't think properly about what they want to do. So some of the information they're not capturing. Some of the information might be in the wrong place. Some of the properties are not set up the right way. So when it comes to doing other things that's going to come up right after the capture, it's difficult for them to do that because, again, garbage in, garbage out. All right. So taking the time in any of these instances, and there are other ways that you can bring certain leads in as well. You could import leads from off of your phone, etc., etc. But even if you are importing the lead off your phone, one of the instances that relates to lead management is making sure that that sales rep updates the specific properties in the field, so that when it's time to now manage those leads in the future based upon how you want to be able to qualify. As a matter of fact, I just recognized that I didn't put the word qualify there. All right. So because when a lead comes in based upon the information that's in the property, you can qualify, and based upon how they qualify, where they qualify in terms of the scale of your business, or what they may qualify for in the higher education space, you can begin nurturing that said person. All right. So in terms of creating the properties to make sure it matches your process, so that when certain things come in, or if a customer says I'm interested in X, then it could actually trigger something. It could trigger a message to a sales rep. It could move them across to a specific team, etc., etc. But again, you want to be able to be efficient based upon the properties that you have, because your properties tie into your strategy, right? So once you have that, then you have the ability of doing things like segmentation. And when we're looking at segmentation, so on the left, we just have a general list, right? If you look at the list, it says 258 contacts. However, when we look on the right-hand side, it says 10. So out of that 258, based upon who we wanted to find by using advanced filters inside of HubSpot, we were able to now just drill down, and we decided to pull a sample list of 10. And with that 10, you have the ability of doing anything that you want to do, because you can then enroll them in different things, right? In this instance, however, one of the challenges that I see happen is that when leads come in, leads tend to get stale. All right. Now, I didn't include task management as one of the lead management strategies. All right. So it's not here as a slide, but task management inside of HubSpot, in terms of how we manage our tasks, right? In terms of how we manage our tasks is extremely important, right? So within the portal, coming into the CRM, and we go down to where it says tasks, right? Here, it is extremely important in terms of how you manage your tasks, because then that now shows up on your phone. It shows up on your desktop. You get it as an email in the morning as a summary, because again, it's a lead, and you have a specific activity to do for said lead. Again, it also comes back down to a certain level of discipline as well. All right. So task management is one of the main things. And guess what? I'm talking about it now, but we'll maybe come back with it later. When it comes to creating certain levels of automation based upon a task activity, again, removing certain redundancies. So you want the sales rep to do one thing first, but once so that if he or she completes this, then it then triggers something else that could automate and sort of remove the redundancies and the additional work that's happening there. But again, it's understanding that you have a lead management strategy and you're leveraging on the expertise or the features within the tool to help you do that. All right. So if we're coming back to where this is, what I like to talk about this is that because when leads come in and people are so sometimes overwhelmed with the volume of leads, as I say, for Trinidad and Tobago, higher education, we have a lot, while we do have a lot of schools, higher education is something that's in demand, right? But when the lead actually comes in, you tend to find sometimes that sales reps don't always focus on the right things. So there's a particular feature, as simple as it is, inside of HubSpot, where it actually tells you your last contacted, and you actually see that if you were to go, if you go into views here, right? If you go more, it actually lets you know, right? These main things here: recently assigned, my contacts, the ones who need follow-up, next action, and of course, who's unassigned. So I personally find that if you're just looking at the basic things inside the CRM, right? My uncontacted needs an email follow-up and needs next action, I believe, are extremely important as to when it comes to the task, the leads management side of things. And that's just a simple thing that's right inside of HubSpot. The other one that we want to talk a little bit about is nurturing. All right. Now, when you're looking at your nurture, you could look at your nurture in a couple of ways, and you'll see me referring to, apart from just bringing the lead in, and I just use the example of, let's say, for instance, a lead goes cold or it's going to go cold. There are ways that you could actually use automation. So I just gave an example that I decided to, I completed a task, and based upon what task I just completed, HubSpot now executes something else or a series of different things, right? Whether it's enrolling in a sequence or sending out an email, etc., or updating someone else within the organization. So two main areas that I like to talk about when we're looking at the automations is along the lines of workflows and sequences, all right? And as we're looking at workflows and sequences, let's use again stale leads as the example, right? And in this example, we have stale leads that's where the last modified date is either is over 30 days, and then we're not sure what the activity is, etc., etc. You could modify your filter for leads that are becoming stale. In this instance, we're looking at an example where an organization may want to follow up with a lead. They may want to see leads that are going to be stale in 30 days, all right? So because after 30 days for them, it's important. They need to maybe take some additional action. Well, one, by putting the filter together, you will notice here that we have, let's say about, 576 leads somewhere in this example, all right? So with this, what can the organization then do? Well, if we're looking at it from the automation standpoint, right, this is where you can take this same list and enroll into a sequence, all right? Or if you have all the information in the properties, especially things like email addresses, then you can send marketing emails out. One of the emails I might like to use in this instance from a sequence as a one-to-one type email would be an email that sort of reaches out to say, are you still interested? Or let's reconnect, or we seem to have lost contact. But again, you're using your own strategies to say, okay, let's at least see what's stale. Because here's the thing, I've seen where schools are always looking at bringing in new leads. But sometimes the money of what you're looking for is in what you already have. And there's a saying by my good friend from LinkedIn called Sean Amora, where he says, opportunity is in the areas of your process that's not properly managed. And I'll repeat that again, right? He says opportunity is in the areas of your process that's not properly managed. And with lead management, in an instance like this, we don't know if these 576 people are still interested. It could just mean someone else They may be interested by going by someone else instead of buying because we didn't follow up with the lead, or we haven't done the right things to move the lead from one stage to the next as it relates to this. So this is one way that you could actually go about using sequences inside of HubSpot, and you're using it to manage leads. And in this instance, I'm using the example of leads going stale. All right. So in other areas where automations could be found, we can actually look at that from the standpoint of forms. All right. So again, you are bringing in leads because forms is something that most schools, when we work with the schools, they're always using a form, right? Form for this, form for that, form for the third. So again, it's different things. But understanding how do you want to use the form, and you will find that if you go in when you're building out your form, if you look to the far right hand side, based upon the version of HubSpot that you are using, if you are using starter and above, for starter you have some limited automation that's in there, and of course if you're using pro and up, you have a little bit more that you can use. I can't recall how much free gets in starter, in automations, if at all. Something I may have to look into. But at the end of the day, it's here, right? So if we're looking at bringing in new forms for quote unquote the university, what's going to happen, again, thinking as to how you want to be able to use this particular feature to help you manage your leads. So what comes next, right? Then when you get to this particular stage inside of here, what you will see that HubSpot is going to offer you is the ability to create some level of automation. What is going to be your trigger? Whether you use the simple automation on the right hand side, or sorry, on the right hand side or the left hand side, based upon what you choose. All right, you have the ability of adjusting your form, and there's an example as to what that can look like, because you can do a number of things. Send an external email, send an internal email. At the end of the day, folks, we are talking about how do we want to manage the leads. Even if it comes to automating, so you see where it says create a task or create a record, then it means if that lead has been qualified by your sales rep, or if that lead has taken a certain level of activity. In one of the earlier slides, we saw that somebody had 60 visits to the website. So let's say you're looking at the number of visits. It's a little of a frivolous metric, but let's just say you want to look at the number of visits, and that number of visits hits 60, or they visited a specific page a number of times. I'm just using some very light examples here. Then what can happen is that you can have HubSpot create a deal, but you are automating the process so that these things are managed and they're done without always having the human input or human error that can cost you revenue in the long run. But again, as it says here, think about how you would like to use this feature, because far too often we tend to find that there's not a lot of thought going into it, or because it requires a little bit more thought, people are a little bit more hands off to it. Again, I've seen that where people, all of that, boy, we have to think about. Yeah, you actually have to think about it, because you're starting to think process now, right? And how that process is going to now enhance the day-to-day operations of said individual and the organization. All right. So when you're looking at it from the areas of your forms, when you get into your form, again, as you would see, it's right here across it's the last option when you're building out your form. When you click on it, this is what the trigger is going to give you. And these are your options. These are the options is that if you are pro and above. If you are not, you will not have some of these here. Like for instance, if you're a starter, as much as you may see the option to create a record, you're going to see all of that being locked. All right. So if you are a starter and you do get this far, you're going to see that you have some limitations, but you do have the ability of doing a lot of things as well as it relates to your automations. The other one is in terms of your email, right? So again, if we're just sticking with the fact that the leads that have come in based upon who's interested in what programs or what courses, etc., but we want to make sure that those things are managed, or we want to now use, they filled out a particular form, and we want to now start sending them some email marketing emails. Then within your email marketing email, again, think about how you want to use this particular feature inside of HubSpot. All right, because the same thing applies. But look at this, you have a lot more options as it relates to the email marketing side of things. All right, so when you're looking at, when you are looking at how, so you notice that it's a lot more than what we had in forms, right? Because based upon the activity or what would have happened, the scenario of what would have happened when this email marketing email went out, you can take a number of different actions. So these could be a number of different triggers. And in each step, when you're building out the workflow, especially if you're building it on the back end like this, you get to do about 8 steps. So you get to do about 8 things going down, and you have different options. So you can actually now create multiple options right here as it relates to what happens when a lead takes some sort of activity with your email marketing email. Again, it just requires a little bit more thought, a little bit more time. But once you set this up the right way, you may have about maybe 5 iterations of the thing, because you may start off with it being one way, and then eventually you recognize. So someone from your school visits the website, fills out a form. They say that they're interested in this particular program, and this particular program they want to enroll at this time. Boom, you send them their first email that sort of nurtures them, right? But when they open that email, if they have other things to click, or it points them to a specific blog page, all of those activities you can actually now monitor and manage. That's within here, but you're using the automation to help you do that as it relates to your lead. Because someone, I'm not go into all of those different automations, but if someone visits a page, then a course advisor or sales rep could be notified. All right. So as it relates to email marketing, this is one of the areas that we have the ability of really leveraging on how we use this, especially for our pro users moving forward. All right. I'm going to go across to one of HubSpot's newer features, because I think it does a very good job as it relates to lead management. All right. And this is in prospecting. All right. So for those of us who haven't seen it before, if that has happened at all, it's in HubSpot's workspace, and it's one of the first ones that came up here, which is called prospecting. All right. Now with prospecting, it's basically exactly that, right? Prospecting is a summary of all of your leads that would have come in over a particular period of time, and then you can classify what those leads are, whether it's a marketing qualified lead or a sales qualified lead, when you're building out the framework of your prospecting workspace. But at the end of the day, it's a centralized space, because what I have seen from folks who are in the space of higher education and have to work with all of these leads, sometimes they may have a couple screens open at the same time. That in itself, or not even screens, they may have a couple of tabs. So they have a tab for this customer and for this lead and for that lead. That I get it. You want to do all of these things from a multitasking standpoint, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are actually being productive, right? And sometimes you could find yourself being overwhelmed or having to switch between screens within HubSpot. So HubSpot has put together this particular space called your prospecting workspace. And the prospecting workspace, for me, I think it's actually pretty good, because it initially gives you a number of things that you can follow up on, right? So it gives you that summary from the beginning. It lets you know who's enrolled in your sequences, and I'm going to give you a live example thereafter. And also it pulls up stuff that kind of highlights to you in terms of your emails, meetings and outcomes. So again, all in one place. And if you look down to the bottom left-hand side, your leads. And inside of HubSpot, folks, you have the ability, if you're using some level of AI, is one thing that a customer and I tested, where we use ChatGPT, we use their form, we use ChatGPT, and we built some, how do I call this? Scenarios. If the customer answered this, but not this, or if they answered it this way and then this way, how do we know that those are hot, cold, and warm leads? We built those things inside of HubSpot, so that when the lead goes to the course advisor, or when it goes to the sales rep, etc., it lets them know, hey, this actually lead looks pretty good. Give them an outreach. This is a list of the things that they would have answered. So you're using different tools to help you, because when we build those things inside of HubSpot as a workflow, if, and again, that comes back to your properties, right? So if the responses to the forms are either this, and then, or not this, and not this, then this might be a warm lead as opposed to a hot lead or a cold lead. Again, it's you thinking of the different scenarios. Not just a matter of now having people just fill out the form and you just have a lot of data, but now using AI, putting that information inside of your workflows, so that when people do actually fill out the form, it is now trying to tell the course advisor, whoever is the recipient of the data, something else. All right. So again, there are different ways that you can do it. That's one of the, maybe that we did that a couple of months ago. It's still actually a work in progress, because we have seen little errors in it. So it's just a matter of refining it, but at least trying it, to me, is helpful. And it really helps in terms of, again, lead management strategies, right? It helps because it helps you put emphasis on who is good now. So instead of someone having to read through this, getting the information from you, from your manager. Okay, so if people answered these questions, are they hot leads, cold leads, warm leads? And then how do we trigger workflows based upon that? All right, so I want to take you a little bit into the prospecting space. So prospecting, as I would have shared with you, it is here. But it's kind of what it looks like. All right, so we have leads that would have come in. This is the summary. All right, so we have 38 leads. That's in the list. I don't have anybody here that's in a sequence. Excuse me. I think that list of leads does not have email addresses. So I may not be able I wouldn't be able to run sequences. On my right, there's a little bit of a, excuse me, my tasks, my schedule, and of course, there's a repeat of the same thing. The leads that I have, who am I attempting to contact? So it's going to track that. Who have I already connected with and who's in a sequence? All right. When I go to the second space, and again, the reason why I like this is because it's a centralized view to manage my leads. All right. Any one of these folks I decide to work on, all right, excuse me, and I'm only tracking 3 stages right now. All right. So we're not looking at closed or qualified as yet. I'm just looking at these 3. So if I would decide now to work with Rodney or work on Rodney Rivera, what now happens is that the workspace for me to do my work is now on the right. So here, if I needed to put him in a sequence, then I can go ahead, I can go about doing that. So again, having a centralized space to work, we spoke about the automations, we spoke about the sequences, etc. But even if there's information that needs to be filled out, right? Again, which is something that HubSpot using workflows can help trigger. Meaning, if there's a particular field that is missing information, and HubSpot, you create a workflow that where HubSpot now looks for that and it's unknown, then it will send that information, send that request to please update the information, whether it's back to the course advisor. If you want to send it back to the customer with that field as its own little single form, so when they fill it out and hit submit, it updates here. Again, thinking of how you can use HubSpot creatively to help manage your process, but manage your leads, because once they fill out that, if that now moves them into a next stage or helps them create a deal, then again the information is all there. All right, so you have the ability of just doing the normal things that you're accustomed doing, whether it's creating a note, sending an email, etc. Right, but you are managing your leads from here. And one of the things that I think I should be able to, like if I were to go here, right? So we have the ability of enrolling them in a sequence, similar to what I would have shown you on the slide, where I could now pull these people in directly into a sequence and allow that sequence to run. Right? How we manage leads, we can't afford to be losing leads because of mismanagement, or losing revenue because of the mismanagement of leads. And we also can't afford to be putting additional work, especially when the space is so competitive. Sometimes when the volume is so high, I don't know if it's realistic. I remember having to ask one person, because what their KPIs were for one of their sales reps, I felt that was a lot. So I had to realistically ask the question, is that realistic? Like, could they do that on a day-to-day? And this is where I was explaining to them. To be honest with you, I don't know if they would have taken the advice. All right, I was explaining to them, see, oh, some of that stuff could definitely go inside a HubSpot, and it will help the sales rep and it will help you, right? But again, this may be a little bit off topic, but folks have to get a little bit more modernized in how they think, because if you are still thinking that you want this person to do this list of work to make sure that they are productive and not using the technology, then I think you're thinking back in the old days, right? So to try to say that in a nice way. All right, so we can kind of wrapping up a little bit. So when it comes to managing your leads, I want to just talk a little bit about this a little bit, right? When it comes to managing your leads, this is the illustration of a student enrollment journey map. From when a student, whether it's a mature enrollment or a young enrollment, meaning the age of the individual and what they might be coming to do, you can work towards managing those leads at each stage. And I'll share, there's a resource that's going to come after this that the recipients, that those who would have attended, you're going to have access to this. So you can look at when persons are in that research mode, how do you know, apart from just reaching out to them, if they do sort of make some level of contact, whether they're in your database already, or whether they're brand new and they reach out to you to come, they somehow make their way into your CRM and they are at a specific stage, how do you nurture them? Because it's not just a matter of trying to move them towards getting an application, but it's understanding where they are in their journey and how do you know use the your strategies towards managing these leads at the different stages of their journey. It's an extremely important philosophy. And again, I know that everybody has numbers to hit, but sometimes with just the focus of trying to hit numbers, it's two extremes, right? It's either hitting the number at the end of the funnel or getting new leads at the top of the funnel. But the middle of the funnel is not always well taken care of. And that's why I'm trying my best to pay some emphasis on the middle and the different things that we need to be doing in the middle, because as I say again, the biggest opportunities, the areas of opportunity is in the areas that's not well managed. And it's something I totally believe in because I see it every day. Outside of HubSpot, if I'm just doing consulting on sales, it's in the middle. The middle of the funnel is where a lot of the money is being left on the table, even if it relates to moving people out of your CRM, because you can do that as well. If you recognize, okay, these people are not qualified, even when we're looking at it from the prospecting space. If I needed to move these people to say, okay, they are not qualified, then I disqualify them and you get them out of the CRM. Because yes, we can do that as well. But lead management is for us to be able to capture, qualify, nurture, and convert. And that's why it's so important. And as I said, I decided to do this because I wanted to give it some structure in terms of how it was presented. And so folks can actually see. As I said, I didn't need to be doing a whole set of bells and whistles all over HubSpot, because it's really in a concentrated space. And there are resources inside of HubSpot. I'll also share those after. There are resources inside of HubSpot. There's a HubSpot Academy program that talks about lead management as well. So even if you decide that, you know what, I really need to have my folks pay attention to this, again, guess what? There's a certification course that you can look at inside of HubSpot that deals with lead management. And there's literature that talks about lead management as well. Yeah. So if we were to go back here, I think this would be the last part of the slide. All right. As I said, I want to just keep it concentrated as it relates to lead management. So we spoke about why it's important, what it is. We spoke about the examples of people losing money because they're not managing their leads. All right. And then we looked at the different instances where you can use tools inside of HubSpot to better manage your leads. We spoke about a couple of scenarios. We looked at some areas within HubSpot that helps you do that. And now we are at the end of our session. right? So I saw we have I think I have a DM or a. So I want to say, Debbie, thanks again for joining. It's a pleasure. Michelle, thanks again for joining. I hope that the information was valuable to you. Alex, my brother, how are you doing? Thanks again for taking the time to join. Small group, but value the attendance and the time of every single one of you. Let's see what's in here. So Debbie has, oh, right, she's saying hello everyone, and even a WhatsApp automated message. Yes, WhatsApp automated messages are excellent. There are two versions, and I wanna indicate that too as well. So you can use the native WhatsApp feature inside of HubSpot, but I have actually found, and let me see if I can share this with you all as a little bit of a nugget. I have actually found that there's a pretty damn good application inside of HubSpot called um, Timelines AI. Let me see if I can find that. Timelin. This. Yo, I believe, to me, this is one of the better. Okay, let me just say it. I think it's kind of better than HubSpot's own native application because within here as well, you get the ability of running those WhatsApp messages, and it captures voice notes, it captures videos, it stores it in its own portal as well. But if you click and but it saves it right on it saves it right inside of the it saves it right inside of the record in real time, and you don't need to have a business account. No, so you can have a regular HubSpot account. You don't need to have a WhatsApp business account for this. So it's just really dependent upon what does the school use or what does the user use. And again, in its own way, lead management, because again, you have the ability of triggering certain things along the lines of your workflows. All right. So yes, Debbie, thanks a lot for that point on using WhatsApp as well. All right. Um, what's the compatibility? Good question. It is open to all hubs. I don't believe this. The only thing that you may have to do, there's a price point to it, about $20. Right. So, and this is what you get. So if you're looking at the shared inbox, which is multiple, if you have multiple users and you want to use like a shared inbox, then this is the cost. And I think it's $30 per WhatsApp number. And this is another one, just the standard one. But again, for what it does, I think it's excellent. Oh, wait a minute. Let's make sure. All right. Those are the monthly prices if you're not looking at doing an annual subscription. Yeah. So, Michelle, you are welcome, and look out for. So Michelle is actually saying, I find the drip campaigns using the workflows extremely valuable in lead nurturing and conversions. Yep, and that's one area I didn't even speak about, right? So that's in the space of conversion, using campaign. But again, drip campaigns, yes. So if I'm speaking campaigns here, but you're using that workflow feature to run the drip campaigns. So yeah, excellent point there as well, as it relates to nurturing your respective leads. All right. So folks, have a good Tuesday. It's funny, I got up today thinking it was Wednesday, right? Have a good Tuesday, and we will catch up. We will have another one that's going to be coming up within the next 3 weeks. And that one is going to be specific to marketing contacts, because I've recognized that marketing contacts has become a pain point for a lot of schools as well. Again, all these leads, and again, if you're not managing them well, if you're not getting the ability to qualify them well or disqualify them, everybody gets stuck as a marketing contact. So we kind of back to doing this juggling, take some out, put some in, so I'm going to try to bring someone who can speak that. Because I myself get a little tripped up on it sometimes. But so while I have a strategy, I want to get somebody who's also strong in that space. And we talk a little bit about marketing contacts, using them effectively in higher education and different scenarios. But again, it ties into lead management. All right. Take care, folks. This was a pleasure, and look forward to catching up with you all in the next couple of weeks.